Hello and welcome to the Katie Halper Show. On this episode, we talk to Katie Baker, a reporter at Buzzfeed, who wrote a piece called Juanita Broaddrick Wants to Be Believed. Who is Juanita Broaddrick? Well, in 1999, Broaddrick accused Bill Clinton of raping her in 1978 in her hotel room in Little Rock, Arkansas. Not surprisingly, the mainstream liberal feminist media responded with a deafening silence, which was shattered only by Wonkette's Rebecca Schoenkopf, who is a Hillary Clinton supporter. She was the only one not on the right to respond to the story and wound up issuing a bit of a rape apology. The same week that the Buzzfeed story came out, feminists were tweeting, quote, "believe women," end quote, but it wasn't in reference to Broaddrick. It was in reference to the women who had accused a New York City comedian of raping them. Gabe and I talk about this rape controversy rocking the New York City comedy scene, Amy Schumer, and her writer Kurt Metzger. We will be releasing an interview we did with Juanita Broaddrick shortly, so make sure you keep your eyes out for that one. Also coming up is an interview that we do with Tony Smith. Tony Smith was a college basketball player who refused to face the flag during the national anthem in 2003. She'll talk to us about Colin Kaepernick, the 49ers quarterback who's causing controversy with his decision to sit down and not stand during the national anthem. We have an important announcement. The Katie Halper Show will be moving from 6 p.m. on Wednesdays to 7 p.m. on Wednesdays. And as always, you can find us on WBAI. That's FwdRad.io or 99.5 FM. And we're on SoundCloud, iTunes, and Facebook. We have a Facebook page, The Katie Halper Show. Make sure you subscribe to us on iTunes, rate us and review us, and follow us on SoundCloud. Hello, and welcome to The Katie Halper Show. I'm your host, Katie Halper, and I'm joined, as always, by Gabe Pacheco.
Hey, everybody, what's going on? It's me, Gabe Pacheco.
Very funny man, comedian, my co-host, my co-sponsor. My professional life partner, my radio podcast life partner.
In the sidecar. We're just cruising down the highway. Where are we headed, Katie? What are we doing today?
I love it when we're cruising together. First of all, I just want to mention that. We have a great show for you. We talked to Katie Baker, a great journalist who has a really great piece on Juanita Broaddrick for BuzzFeed called Juanita Broaddrick Wants to Be Believed. And Juanita Broaddrick, again, is a woman who claims that Bill Clinton raped her. And she claims that this happened in 1978. When Bill Clinton was the Arkansas Attorney General. And the details are that she thought that they were having a meeting. They were going to meet in a hotel lobby. She ran nursing homes, and she retired, but that's what she did for her whole life. They met. He said if she was ever in Little Rock, Arkansas, that she should look him up. They'd have a meeting, talk about nursing home stuff. And she says that he asked her at the last minute if they could meet in her hotel room instead of the lobby because there's press in the lobby. And then she says that he raped her. She says he bit her lip. And a couple of witnesses saw her afterwards. She had a bruised lip. They're witnesses who corroborated at least what she looked like afterwards, right? She didn't speak out until the 90s, and she didn't want to speak out, and she finally did speak out. But in January of 2015, that she tweeted out this thing that went viral. And it was, "I was 35 years old when Bill Clinton, Arkansas Attorney General, raped me, and Hillary tried to silence me. I'm now 73. It never goes away." And that was because, according to this Katie Baker interview with her, she went ballistic, Juanita says about herself. She went ballistic when she heard Hillary Clinton talking about sexual assault and how we have to believe women.
I want to send a message to every survivor of sexual assault. Don't let anyone silence your voice. You have a right to be heard, and you have a right to be believed. We're with you.
And it was kind of the hypocrisy of everything. There is a lot of hypocrisy in this story because we have feminists who talk about believe women. It's this mantra where you kind of, your default, you believe the woman by default. That doesn't mean that the person's guilty in the court of law, but it means that you think that what's their ulterior motive, what woman wants to do this, right?
And I understand that.
Yeah.
You know, it is compensating in that direction, recalibrating, in the face of systemic patriarchy, misogyny, and
rape culture, rape apology.
Rape culture, rape apologists. So to believe women being the default does add,
some balance.
Exactly.
Right. But we have these feminists who hold up the mantra, who repeat the mantra, believe women. But all of a sudden, for obvious reasons, mainly because they love Hillary Clinton, and it's kind of inconvenient, just to say that her husband may have raped someone, it doesn't have a good chime to it, right? It's not a good soundbite.
No, alleged rapist is not what you want to hear.
Mr. First Man. What is he, first man?
Yeah.
He'll be the first man and first alleged rapist. Although, let's be honest, Thomas Jefferson. Hey, what? Bill, it's cool, Bill.
Yeah.
Bill Thomas Jefferson.
You come from a long line.
It's a Bill Jefferson Clinton.
Yeah.
There's a Jefferson in there.
I just feel like all the slave-owning presidents were
all
rapists.
the slave-owning presidents were rapists, or so either they themselves were rapists or they were involved in
mass raping.
Yeah.
Letting it happen.
Rape under their watch. But Bill, you're really in good company. I mean, what can we say? Not so much for this century, but he's a classicist. He's a classicist. He was a Rhodes Scholar. He went to Oxford. He likes his classics. Classical rapists. And just so what we have is people on the liberal feminists who like Hillary Clinton, who talk about believe women. All of a sudden, their mom's the word. They don't talk about this story that came out. They haven't talked about it at all. That's hypocrisy. The other hypocrisy is the right wing, who doesn't care about rape victims. They never talk about believe women. In fact, they make fun of that idea because they're conservative and sexist. To be fair, to be generous. And all of a sudden, they're rape survivor advocates, right? So you have this weird reversal where you have liberals being quiet about the issue. Feminist liberals don't talk about Juanita Broaddrick. They either don't talk about her or they try to suggest she's a right-wing tool. Like Slate, for instance, when Slate covered the Buzzfeed interview, their headline was, "A new Buzzfeed piece shows how Juanita Broaddrick has drifted to the right." Not sure that's relevant.
Not talking at all about her being a possible victim, more about her political opinions, which are not relevant.
Germane, right. So they talk about, of course, they do go through the possibility of her victimhood.
But you know who I'm going to vote for?
Who?
The guy that didn't rape me.
Yeah, I know. You're crazy.
I get that.
Is that weird? I'm so surprised she's not a volunteer at her local DNC chapter. She actually was volunteering for Clinton. That's how they initially met.
Yeah.
She wasn't that political, but she started volunteering for him. But
she was on his team.
She was on his team.
You know what? He lost a fan.
He lost a fan. Yeah. That, a good way to how to lose a fan in 10 days? What's the movie? How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days?
You got it.
How to Lose a Fan in 10 Days? Rape.
Don't do it.
Don't do it.
You will lose a fan.
You will lose a fan, yeah. No more envelope stuffing from that person. But yeah, that was one of the responses. But that response, so basically they're trying to delegitimize her, right? They're trying to marginalize her, take away her credibility. Again, it's neither surprising nor relevant that this woman could be in John Birch society. I don't care, right? It makes sense because, again, the hypocrisy among liberals forced her to the right. Where else was she going to go? They weren't writing about this. They weren't defending her. They weren't saying her name. They weren't believing her.
You gotta go. You go where the love is.
You go where the love is, and for her, the love was on the right wing, in the right wing. And she's not. I mean, she's not that crazy political. She's going to vote for Trump. She says because, in fact, if we talk to Juanita Broaddrick, maybe we can ask her what would it take for you to not vote for Trump.
Then but what's one vote matter anyway?
I know. I mean, really, I would love to vote for Trump if I were in her situation. I'm impressed that I would be like knocking door. I'd be door to door knocking. I think. I don't know. I've never been in that situation, but I feel like I would be. Yeah. But they're trying to marginalize her. They're trying to say she's a right wing nut. And again, wasn't picked up by liberals. So we got hypocrisy on both sides. And you get the right wing who doesn't care about rape victims. And it's like this weird role reversal, right? So, but the way that I heard about the story was that actually, and it's kind of cool in a weird way. Like this woman at Wonkette, she wrote basically a rape denial. We talked about this a little bit last week. But she wrote a piece called Let's Talk About Juanita Broaddrick. To her credit, I have to say something. We made fun of her. When I saw this tweet, I tweeted up a storm. And we made fun of her for being a rape apologist, basically, right? Which is what she did. She said...
Which it was, by the way, if you read any of it, that would be great. But it is more rape apologist than almost any other rape apology I've ever...
It's a historic moment in rape apology. It's a milestone moment. Hillary Clinton's milestone when she becomes president, she reached a milestone getting the nomination. Well, Wonkette reached a milestone when they published this amazingly over-the-top rape apology. And what she said was, I think Bill Clinton could very well have raped Juanita Broaddrick. It doesn't make him an evil man or irredeemable. I'm Catholic. We're all forgiven. if we're sorry, and Broaddrick says Bill Clinton personally called her up to apologize. It doesn't even necessarily make him a bad feminist, later once he stops doing that.
Wow. That's...
Again, we talked about this last week. You want to be a good feminist? Follow up with a phone call. It's not that hard, guys. Rape, call. Rape, call. That's the order. Remember? Don't do it the other way around. That doesn't count. You don't get credit for a call before the rape.
As long as you say you're sorry.
You say
it's
you're
all
sorry,
good.
Yeah. But what's crazy about this article is that I kind of see her as like the Trump in this case, to mix political metaphors. She's a Clintonite, this woman, Rebecca, Commie Girl on Twitter. But what's crazy about this is that this forced the conversation out of the water, right? Blew it out of the water because it was such an egregious rape apology. It wasn't even about Juanita Broaddrick. It was about this woman saying out loud that you could be a feminist and a rapist. Not literally at the same time, but I guess once he's not raping the person, if he was a feminist before, there's like a grace period where he's not a feminist while he's raping the person. But the second he walks out, or another verb out, he's back in feminist status. He has his feminist card again.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is that her piece, besides that, and she got attacked for it, but her piece actually is very much believes Juanita Broaddrick. So it's funny because she's one of the few people on the left, one of the few liberals, who defends Juanita Broaddrick and who's also a Clinton fan. So in some ways, she did a service because she was the Donald Trump. She said the stuff that no one wanted to say, which was like, so what if he did do it? I don't think other people would have said that still makes him a feminist, but she said that. And then she also did a service because she actually went through the likelihood of its probability, because I think a lot of people had just didn't want to talk about it. We are so excited to be talking to Katie Baker, who is a national reporter for Buzzfeed and is based in New York City. And she wrote this great deep dive on Juanita Broaddrick called Juanita Broaddrick Wants to Be Believed. Hi, welcome, Katie Baker. Katie, are you there?
Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for coming. Katie, can you tell us a little bit how this story happened, why you wanted to write about it, when you thought of writing about it, what the process was like with your editors?
Yes, definitely. So it was actually an assignment. I asked our editor-in-chief, Ben Smith, for a politics assignment because I really wanted a break from my beat, which I just do. I like to call it institutional injustice, but it usually involves sexual violence, and just looking for a break. And so I said, just assign me some politics story, anything. And then, of course, I got the politics story, That's Without Rape. Ben just said, how would you feel about profiling Juanita Broaddrick? And I vaguely knew who she was. I knew that she had accused Bill Clinton of something, but her allegations kind of were jumbled together in my head with those of other women, which I think is true for a lot of people. And once I read up about them, I was really shocked that I wasn't more familiar with her story, and so that's why I was interested in going out to meet her and not going over the allegations themselves as much as kind of seeing what it's like to be Juanita Broaddrick now. I mean, her whole life she's just been kind of thrust into this national conversation without, really wanting to be there, and now finally she's taking some agency over it and getting a lot of shit for it, basically, from liberals who don't understand why she's inserting herself into the fray, and I thought that was an interesting tension.
I barely knew about Juanita Broaddrick. I knew her name, but I realized that the way I actually found out about your story, was, I guess, the day after your story came out. Rebecca in Wonkette, she wrote this thing that wound up being kind of like a rape apologia, and it went really viral on Twitter, and there were lots of responses to it. But what I thought was fascinating is that kind of force people to look at the issue and look at the story. And I almost feel like there was this pact, this unspoken, this tacit agreement among lots of liberals and progressives and feminists that we kind of wouldn't talk about this story because it was so complicated, because rape stories are so complicated. And for me personally, I've been very critical of Hillary Clinton, and I was afraid that if I did bring this up, I would be kind of marginalized as fringe right-wing conspiracy theorists. What do you think about that? I mean, what do you think about why the story hasn't been receiving more attention?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think that it's a few things. I think the most terrible explanation is there isn't really that much more to say about her allegations. She says that she was raped in the 70s. When she spoke out in the 90s, there was no evidence. Bill Clinton denied it. she said it happened, but it was too late to press charges. The impeachment trial had already happened. She didn't want, to file a civil suit or to, there really isn't that much to do about it. And I think, especially in the context of Hillary Clinton running for president, I think that a lot of progressives or liberals understandably don't really see why do we have to bring this up now, given that there's no way to prove it, nothing really to do about it anymore. And I can understand that, but the thing I found so interesting and that I tried to get out in my story is, so many people kept saying this is only coming up because Hillary's running, or why should we talk about this, or, and I found that understandable, but then you meet Juanita, and if you believe her story, if you believe that Bill Clinton raped her, to say that she shouldn't speak out about it now when finally people are listening to her is really cruel and almost re-victimizing in a way, I think, to say, you can't talk about this thing that happened to you, and obviously, if you believe, there's no way to prove it that it did, but I do think that you have this group of people who normally are very supportive of self-declared rape survivors speaking out and getting, agency over their own stories by speaking out on their own terms. And then when it comes to Juanita, you have all these liberal people saying, why do we have to listen to her talk about this, which I thought was really, complicated.
Problematic, right?
She's like cynically like that she's collateral damage because instead of looking at her individual story and sort of validating her claims, we are seeing her as an inconvenient truth or to get what we want, which is Hillary in office.
Right. She's inconvenient for Hillary supporters.
Yeah, she's definitely inconvenient. And I think the thing is, I really didn't want to write a piece that was, why aren't we talking about this? Or why is it, because I think it's really hard to prove a negative. Like, it's hard to say no one's talking about it or thinking about it. But I do think that there hasn't been, people have run stories, but no one had really done a serious profile of her except for, of course, Breitbart, which has done like 40 pieces on her in the past 6 months, and the National Review. And the only places that were really engaging with her were these right-wing sites who do not typically pay any attention to rape victims unless they fit into their political goals. And I would hope that progressive websites or liberal-leaning websites would be better than that and not only report on rape victims who, I don't think that just because a woman is voting for a Republican or her implication, the implications of her claims are bad for Democrats doesn't mean that she's less credible, and I think that is how a lot of people do think about her.
Right, and of course, to me, it's a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? The progressives, the feminists of the world, the progressive feminists, mainstream liberal feminists, they're not embracing her because she's inconvenient. Why is anyone at all surprised that then she becomes someone who feels more at home among right-wing people who are the only ones who are validating her story?
Yeah, I think it makes complete sense, and I think that I really found it kind of baffling that anyone would hold that against her. I mean, she's obviously not a political or operative. You look at her history, she ran a nursing home. She voted for Obama in 2008, not because she liked Obama particularly, but because she didn't want the Clintons to win. I mean, regardless of whether you believe her, you can't say that she is this right-wing operative. Right. That's just there's no evidence of that.
I mean, I thought one of the more telling quotes, ironically, from your piece, which was, again, so great and so nuanced and so well-researched, was someone from Emily's List who you spoke to, who said, women know that this is an unfair attack on Hillary, and that's why it continues to exist in the small corner of the right-wing media world. But that, of course, is a way to keep it in the right-wing media world, right? You marginalize it as a right-wing story, and then people who aren't in the right wing don't want to touch it because they don't want to be kind of marginalized by extension.
Yeah, and I think that, a way that a lot of liberal writers had discussed this is just kind of asking the question, well, should Hillary be blamed for, what her husband may or may not have done? And I think that that's just a different question. I mean, I didn't really want to try and answer that in my story. I just wanted to listen to Juanita and engage with her, give Juanita the time and analysis that she's only gotten from these right-wing sites. I didn't really want to try and answer just questions of, well, what should this mean for Hillary? Because for Juanita, I think that what she wants to do is she wants people to believe her and she wants to tell her story, and she also doesn't want the Clintons to be back in the White House. But I think that people, it's interesting because in some ways, the real gray area situation here isn't whether she was raped or not, but whether Hillary had anything to do with it. I think a lot of liberal people, they're not going to say she's lying or that it may not have happened, but they do not think that Hillary Clinton has anything to do with it, and therefore they can kind of just say, well, this has nothing to do with Hillary, so we'll just ignore the rest of what she's saying. Does that make sense?
What's interesting is that even if Hillary has nothing to do with it, and it did happen, there's still a rapist who will be wandering around the Rose Garden and who will be at the inauguration wearing a tuxedo and toasting his wife's victory and getting off scot-free. And Juanita will be watching that on television and being triggered by it over and over and over again every time she turns on the TV.
I think it's important to say we don't know that he's a rapist. He's never been charged. So I feel uncomfortable, making a proclamation like that myself. But,
sure.
And that's what's so complicated about writing this story, too, is, there's no way to tell who's telling the truth. There's no way to tell if what really happened. Right. So that's why I really wanted to focus on kind of the political context rather than her claims themselves.
But just to kind of push back on this idea, I mean, part of the problem, and it's ironic that I think one of the reasons that Juanita Broaddrick came out again so strongly, she claims, is because she heard Hillary Clinton mentioning sexual assault. And the whole mantra of believe women has in some ways made this that much more inconvenient, right? We live in an age where feminists, the very feminists who have kind of created this idea around believing women, which you talk about in your piece, which again, it's not a legal standard, right? They're not saying that any woman who claims she was raped, that the person doesn't get a fair trial, right? This is a different issue. This is kind of like outside the court of law, right? How much has that movement, which then, because it's a progressive liberal feminist movement, is very, for the most part, supportive of Clinton, how much did they create this kind of, ironically, do you think?
No, it is. It's definitely, it's this bizarre alternate reality. It's this twist of norms where, you have, not to conflate politicians, but for example, Senator Gillibrand, Emma Silkowitz, who's the mattress girl from Columbia, she took her to a White House event last year as kind of an example and called her a rape victim. And, obviously, her case has been disputed. It's never been to court, and yet you had this politician just holding her up as this example. Yet, when it comes to Juanita, their liberals are going, well, it's never been proven. Where's the evidence? So and so. So I definitely think, that the same progressives, both in the media and in politics, that are very victim-centered and very, based on the philosophy that if a woman is going to speak out and talk about being assaulted, we should listen to her and take her seriously. They're definitely the ones that are more silent on this issue of Juanita Broaddrick.
Right, and as you pointed out in your article, parts of Hillary Clinton's website was modified, right? Because she had I want to send a message to every survivor of sexual assault. Don't let anyone silence your voice. You have the right to be heard. You have the right to be believed, and we're with you. And February, after Juanita Broaddrick had tweeted that tweet, it was the last sentence was removed. You have the right to be believed, and we're with you was removed. Mm-hmm. And did you experience, by the way, any pushback? Because I know that you're, we have friends in common. We're both writers, and lots of feminist friends and feminist writer friends. Did you experience any pushback for bringing this story to light? You don't have to name names. Just curious. Yeah,
not for my friends. I mean, most of my friends voted for Bernie Sanders, probably.
Oh, okay.
My parents and my boyfriend's parents were definitely, they liked my story, but when I first told them I was writing it, they were like, why would you do this? We don't want Donald Trump to be president. I think that my friends, the people that most of the people I talked to about this, including Hillary Clinton supporters, said that they understood why I was writing and they thought it was really interesting. I really didn't get that much pushback from people, especially, I think my story is really fair, and I think, it's not my job to, as a reporter, to determine, whether she's telling the truth or not. My job was to explain her story and let her speak for herself and put her in the context of this bizarre political landscape that we live in. So I think that anyone who actually read my story could not say it wasn't fair.
Yeah, and it is interesting, right? Because you have these kind of competing narratives, competing sexism stories where I don't know what the answer is, right? Like, we keep saying if Bill Clinton did do it, then it's not on Hillary, right? that's certainly a fair thing to Hillary Clinton. And I actually really understand. Like I've become very frustrated. A lot of this show has become Gabe and me talking about how, you know, the sexism label has been used unfairly. Like if you criticize Hillary Clinton on her Honduras policy, it's because she's sexist, right? And so that I find that ridiculous. But what's weird about this story is that this was one of the rare times where, ironically, I really got the claim. Like I got the unfairness of it. I got the sexism.
Yeah.
Like Michelle Goldberg, who I disagree with, but respectfully, on lots of her takes. But she was like, it would be a cruel irony if Hillary Clinton had to pay the price for a crime that her husband didn't have to pay the price for. So I get that, but at the same time, I don't know. How do we reconcile these two things? Because this other woman, Juanita Broaddrick, needs her chance to be heard, right?
I don't think they're mutually exclusive. I think it's possible to listen to Juanita Broaddrick and take her claims seriously and also vote for Hillary Clinton. I don't think, I think that it's way more complex than that, and this election is way more complex than that. And I don't think it has to be, we either talk about it and don't vote for her, or we don't talk about it and vote for her. In my, what I would like to do is have a conversation about this and about her and I think voters should know her story, but I think that doesn't mean that they have to be a single issue voter.
Thank you so much, Katie, and
thank you.
Yeah, come back. We'd love to have you again.
Yeah, I'd love to. I'll talk to you soon, hopefully.
Thanks, Katie.
Thanks.
Bye.
That actually reminded me of a parallel story. In the comedy world, there was a comedian who was accused of being a rapist, an alleged rapist, and it came out on a Women in Comedy Facebook private group forum, and then it kind of spread like wildfire throughout the comedy club community. UCB banned this performer, and then
That's
after
the
that,
Upright Citizens Brigade.
That's correct. In New York City, also has chapters in Los Angeles, and then after that, the Creek in the Cave banned the same performer, and so did other clubs, the Experiment Comedy Gallery. So
because multiple women had come
forward. So UCB never said it officially, but I do know that they did contact bookers and club owners, and so there was an internal investigation that they had where several women came forward and filed complaints against this performer. Then it kind of became a firestorm on Facebook where Kurt Metzger, who is a performer, a stand-up, like a prolific comedian who wrote for the Amy Schumer show, he was coming out and his critique, although it was using hyperbolic language, was basically saying that it isn't enough that he's just banned from clubs. There should be an official police inquiry, and he was looking for more facts. He was looking for facts. He wanted to know what the allegations really were, as opposed to taking UCB's word that they had done a thorough investigation. Now that led to like a firestorm of believe women comments all over Facebook and posts saying that we should believe all women who are accusing anyone of sexual assault. And when that happened, Amy Schumer, as his employer for the Amy Schumer show, was getting tweeted at, and basically people were asking her why she was defending him, why she hasn't fired him yet, how could she have such a sexist rape apologist on her staff, and such a misogynist as well. So that led her to apologize and to distance herself from Kurt. But I'm just thinking about this in terms of like Bill and Hillary too. It's not saying that Hillary, people would say it's unfair for the woman to be blamed for what the man's actions are. And here we have an example where feminists were putting pressure on Amy Schumer to distance herself from Kurt. In the same way, there doesn't seem to be any pressure being put on Hillary to distance herself from Bill, who, even if this one allegation isn't true, I mean, he does have he's got an
interesting track record.
Yeah. There's like a bunch of little baby ducklings of sexual indiscretions and peccadillos following him around in his past.
Right. Yeah, and in all fairness, this is the only, I think, I'm not sure if there are other rape allegations. The other ones are more like And something that happens, I think, and it's problematic, as we love to say, is that sex, like infidelity, gets grouped into the same thing as rape, and that's a problem, right? They talk about this in the military. They talk about, like, there's very different things, right? There's a big difference between consensual relationships and relationships that we may think are not nice to the spouse, right? Like cheating. But again, there's a big difference between
but then there's the idea of like an affair between equals.
As opposed to between an intern and the president of the United States.
Yeah, like an unpaid intern is like a, they're slaves that are
right.
I mean, not like in the old term sense
or the sex slave thing either.
Yeah,
right.
But they're kind of, your job is beholden to this person, and you don't make any money, and you're hoping to get a good approval rating on your resume, 5-star Yelp review for your time as an intern.
Right.
So you're going to go above and beyond.
Right. And one of the biggest people who's involved in this, and they've been like fighting for years, right, is Sadie Doyle, a blogger and writer.
I don't know what she talks about on Twitter because she blocked me years ago. I don't know why.
She blocked me too. It's probably because you follow Kurt Metzger, or because if you follow Jacobin, she'll also block you. But what's fascinating is that Sadie Doyle, who writes about believing women and writes about kind of rape culture all the time, and writes about how women are seen and presented and portrayed as hysterical and irrational, herself included. She talks a lot about mental illness. She tweeted on August 17th about this issue, right? The Amy Schumer, Kurt Metzger issue. Doug Stanhope, who's another comedian who has his own podcast.
Yep.
He said, this is a way too long of a convo for 140 characters, and I'm probably arguing two sides of different stories. So they were having a debate over this story, right? And Sadie's comment was, cool way to shorten the conversation, believe women. So when it comes to this female comedians who are accusing a man of rape, not in a court of law, but outside of court, the rule is to believe women. So I would love to know what Sadie Doyle thinks about believing Juanita Broaddrick or not. And if she's not believable, or she doesn't deserve to be believed, what is that exception to the rule? Believe women unless they are accusing the husband of the woman whose presidency you want to support and make happen. Believe women unless they somehow undermine your political agenda. Believe women as long as they're progressive. Believe women as long as they're not right-wing.
As long as they're a sympathetic and convenient victim.
Right. And I think there's hypocrisy on both sides, right? Because you have people who are 100% believe women. And what's interesting is that this tweet that Sadie Doyle tweeted, the Sadie Doyle tweet came out the same week that people were finally talking about the Katie Baker story about Juanita Broaddrick in Buzzfeed. So she took the time to say believe women when it applied to women, female comedians accusing this comedian of rape,
right?
But not about Juanita Broaddrick. And ostensibly, that's kind of a bigger deal, right?
Right. Who, I mean, the impact on society is going to be much greater,
right?
Than.
In all fairness, I think that. Sorry, yeah.
No, I was just, I was going to say, like, a predator at Upright Citizens Brigade is a big deal, and I advocate 100% for the safety of all comedians in my community, right. And I do believe
right, women.
Yeah, and I do believe these comedians,
right.
But yeah, in the grand scheme of things, it really doesn't matter.
Or let's say it does matter.
A couple thousand people, whereas this is something bigger. This is
right.
going to be the leader of the free world.
Right. Although in all fairness, you could argue, and this is kind of messed up, but the likelihood of Bill Clinton now to rape more people moving forward is very low.
Because he's old.
He's in the public eye. Like, this comedian would have kept raping. But as someone who believes in women's rights on a universal, nonpartisan level, I think that Sadie should have dealt with this. In all fairness, also to Sadie, I think she's right in large. One of the things that Kurt Metzger's doing is that he's saying, "Oh, we should take this seriously. We should take rape seriously enough that we don't just accuse people of doing it. We go file police reports." But what he's also saying is, like, file police reports or shut up. That is, I think, what he's saying, and that's just so insensitive. Like, in this day and age, to not understand, to not have heard about why so many women refuse, like, don't go to the police after they've been raped. Don't do a rape kit. Like, it's not like women are just crazy or lazy, right? There's a reason. There are institutional barriers. There are things that happen. Police don't believe you. They make you feel like a slut. They make you feel like you're not the perfect victim. So why should they believe you?
You got to wait a long time. You're in a police station.
Yeah.
It's a bummer.
Yeah, it's a bummer. I mean, in Law & Order SVU, all the Law & Orders, actually, they all cover rape.
I watched the night of, just the first episode of it so far.
Rape? Any rape?
No, there's a murder. Okay. No big deal, guys. I'm not giving away too much,
NBD,
but
yeah.
We're looking at it's a procedural. Richard Price wrote it, and you'd see that, you just see how awful it is to have any interactions with the police. It doesn't matter whether you're a witness or whether you're the suspect.
Right. And I mean, it's probably worse if you're the victim, but besides that, if you're alive. But in those shows, you always see them taking a shower right away, right?
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like, all these things, it's like when people say, you know, these black people are this, that, the other, they're just lazy, they're just blah, blah, blah. It's like, what is the statistical, like, likelihood of that? Clearly, there's structural issues, right? It's not just a bunch of people deciding not to go graduate, not to apply to this job. A bunch of women deciding just not to file a police report for the hell of it. Yeah. All right, cool. So, believe women. We'll have to make some variations of that.
Yeah, I think what's interesting is that it's the Juanita Broaddrick case is interesting for me because we know her name. We know
her name. Yeah, sorry.
We know we've heard her side, and this is sort of like what a Kurt would ask for. You know, he would say, who's the victim? What were the circumstances? Right. And we have it here. And in that case, it's like, what else do we need? What incentive does Juanita Broaddrick have?
Right. She didn't come forward initially also. She did not.
Continue talking about this in her 70s.
Right.
Doesn't she just want to be, like, if it wasn't true, like, wouldn't she just want to be chilling as a grandma?
Right. What's her ulterior motive? Exactly. Thank you so much, guys. We love you. Thank you for listening to the Katie Halper Show. I'm your host, as always, Katie Halper, joined by
Gabe Pacheco, and you can follow me on Twitter at Gabe, GABE_PACHECO.
And you can follow me at KT Helps. That's letter K, letter T, HALPS. KT Helps.